guy's going to be some senator one day.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. After a year-and-a-half long drought, no communication, nothing, the Jesse Hughes show is finally back on the air. Welcome. And for the first time ever, we are live in a beautiful Lynchburg, Virginia. It felt like summertime today. It was kind of weird, especially since it snowed literally last week. But feels good today. We're here at Liberty University, here on campus. We are so excited to be back, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys tonight live for the first time ever. We've got a jam-packed show tonight, but I want to lead off with a little bit of current news. So in case you did not see it, the Biden administration has been going after Texas. They've been trying to get Texas to remove the razor wire that has been placed at the southern border. They've been telling them that you're out of your league, you're out of your role here. This is our job. This is not your jurisdiction. And Texas has not listened to them. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court handed down an injunction, a temporary injunction, commanding Texas to relinquish control of the razor wire, to relinquish control of Shelby Park, and to let the federal government do its job. The problem is that the federal government has not been doing its job. Biden has been abdicating his duty. The president is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is enforcing the law. So Texas, under the leadership of Governor Greg Abbott, said, screw you. We're going to do what we need to do to protect our people and to protect our sovereignty. Biden administration originally gave them 24 hours to relinquish control. Greg Abbott stood firm and said no. And after a short standoff, the Biden administration earlier today announced that they would be taking no action against Texas. Conservatives actually won for once. Something that has not happened in a very long time, something that none of us are used to, a conservative victory. The last conservative victory we really had was the Dobbs decision. And of course, that decision, it led to some trigger laws, it led to some legislation being put in place, but we haven't really seen a huge victory coming off of that momentum. Now, we have not only Greg Abbott, not only Texas, but Texas and 25 other states saying the Biden administration has not done their job. The president has abdicated his post. He is not doing what he needs to be doing. We're going to take matters into our own hands, and we're going to support our brothers at the southern border who are doing so. Some states like Florida have even sent National Guardsmen. Now, you have approximately, let me share my screen here. Should be able to see. Yep. As you can see, there are 25 states who have said the Biden administration is not doing the right thing. We're going to step in. We're going to support our brothers, and we're going to do what's right. Greg Abbott is in the right here. President Biden is in the wrong. The Supreme Court made a wrong decision. And not only do you have 25 states, as seen here, but you also have over 100 representatives in the U.S. House of Representatives who have said what they're doing at the southern border is the right thing. Texas is doing the right thing. We need to let Texas do what Texas needs to do. Now, where is all of this headed? Some people believe that we are heading toward a civil war. I do not believe that. I don't think that that's likely. I think that a civil war is going to take a lot more than just what's going on right now to kind of push us over the edge, though this could be something that could potentially be a lead up to one of these things that could push us over the edge. Earlier in the week, I wasn't so sure, but when the Biden administration announced today that they're going to be doing nothing, it gave me some comfort in that fact. Some have been talking about the possibility of national divorce. Now, I don't like that idea. It's something that I could foresee potentially happening, but I don't like that idea. I think the United States is a country worth fighting for. I think that we are one of the greatest countries in the world. We are the greatest country in the world. We've historically been one of the greatest countries in the world. And this is a land that we're going through some rough times right now, but this is still a land that, in my opinion, is worth fighting for. Some people have given up hope. Some people have said it's inevitable, and maybe it is. All empires have to die at some point. But we don't have to allow that to be today. We can use the momentum of this victory at the southern border and carry it forward in order to save our country. Now, as many of you seen earlier this year, I endorsed Donald Trump for president. I have a lot of disagreements with Donald Trump on certain things. I don't like what he said about his wish-washy answer on whether or not a man could become a woman. I don't like how moderate he is on the issue of abortion. There are a few things that I disagree with him on. But the reality is, at this point, Donald Trump is our only chance to beat Joe Biden in November. Nikki Haley's not going to do it. Ron DeSantis is not going to do it. Vivek Ramaswamy is not going to do it. It has to be Donald Trump. Trump ran hard on immigration in 2016. It was his top issue. It was an issue that not many people had spoken about beforehand in the way that he had. Before 2016, you had talks of amnesty. You had talks of common sense immigration reform. You had talks of policies and ideas that were just going to screw America over more than it already had been. But then Trump came along. Donald Trump brought forward the idea of mass deportations, of building the wall, and of having a strict immigration policy that is going to help in America, not hurt it. Trump is not running on immigration right now. He should be. He should be running hard on this issue. This issue is starting to eclipse the economy and how important it is to voters. Think about it for a second. A common farmer in the plains of Iowa somewhere. He sees what's happening on the southern border. He can see that fentanyl is rocking his town. It's ruining lives in his small town. There are people dying, overdosing. People are passing it out like it's candy. And this is happening in small towns all across the country. In 2016, that farmer would have seen Donald Trump and said, that man knows what he's talking about. That man is talking for me. That man is standing up for me. Prior to that, most Republicans were seen as standing up for big business. They were standing up for Wall Street, but they weren't standing up for middle America. And whether or not you like Donald Trump, like I said, I have some disagreements with him. I know plenty of people that don't like him. Trump is the only candidate in the 2016 election who said, I'm going to stand up for middle America and not for you corporate stooges. And that's how he won. And he needs to be doing that again. You've seen flashes of it. We've all seen flashes of it. He's had some 2016-ish moments here and there, but he's not really running like it's 2016. He's not really running like he was running against Hillary Clinton. And that was his fatal flaw in 2020. Now, notwithstanding the fact that there are some questions about how the election was handled, Donald Trump in 2020 was not the same candidate as Donald Trump in 2016. That is clear. And Donald Trump in 2024 is, thank the Lord, not the same candidate he was in 2020. But he's also not the same candidate he was in 2016. Now, 2016 Donald Trump, I don't think is ever going to come back in full force. But 2024 Donald Trump needs to move a lot closer to 2016 Donald Trump than he is right now. And that means going hard on immigration. Now, many of you saw, I posted earlier a policy on immigration, a policy proposal that I think could potentially help save the country. It includes a minimum 10-year moratorium on immigration. That might sound harsh, but the reason for that is because we are taking in 1 million legal people a year. 1 million green cards distributed every year. That's far too many. That's far too many for our country to be able to sustain itself. That's far too many for our country to be able to adequately be able to our resources to be shared with these people. And that's far too many for them to be able to come in and have any sort of assimilation whatsoever. Most immigrants today aren't assimilating. That's just a fact. There needs to be a standard of assimilation for someone to come into this country. If you're going to come into the American country, you have to assimilate to the American culture. Just like in Britain, if you want to come into the British country, you would have to assimilate to British culture. If you wanted to go into the Zimbabwean country, you would have to assimilate to Zimbabwean culture. That's how immigration has worked for hundreds of years prior to our current moment. Post-war liberalism has ruined immigration, just like it's ruined a handful of other things. So in order for us to be able to sustain ourselves, to be able to adequately take in people, and for them to have time to assimilate, it's unfair, it's tough, but we have to put a 10-year moratorium on immigration. It just has to be done. In addition to that, we have to drastically rework the visa structures, and we have to drastically rework how we allow people to come in here. No more chain migration. No more birthright citizenship. No more of these horrible policies that are just making things worse for average day Americans like you and me. We also have to lower the quotas. Right now, like I said earlier, there are 1 million green cards about issued every year. That number should be way closer to 400,000, if not less. Why are we taking in 1 million people per year? I am not anti-immigration, but I am anti that many immigration, that much immigration. That's too many people. I'm sorry. I just genuinely, our country cannot sustain itself. A good friend of mine used an analogy one time. It goes like this. Imagine you are in your house. You have pipes coming into your house that bring water, right? Water is neither good nor is it bad. It's neutral, and it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. The pipes bring in water that is supposed to be used for good, for you to be able to brush your teeth, take showers, water plants, wash clothes, wash dishes, do all these things. If the pipe bursts and all of a sudden you have water gushing into your home, you are going to start having a mix of the good water that's used for good purposes, but you're also going to have dirty water that is only destroying. Now, in order to be able to get the water out of your house, you first have to cut the flow entirely. Then, after you've cut the flow entirely, you have to wait to drain all of the bad water out of your house, clean up and repair your house, repair the pipes, and repair everything necessary in order for you to have a functioning home. And once all of that is done, then you can turn the water back on. In the same way, immigrants are neither good nor bad, they're neutral. People, while inclined to evil because of original sin, in this sense are neutral. There are good people that come into our country who do good things and are a net positive for the country. But when you have an overflow like you do now, sometimes you have to stop all of it. And in order to be able to get the bad immigrants out, you have to stop all immigration whatsoever. Some people have thought, why not just offer people amnesty if they're here, if they've been here for so many years and they've been working and they've been living a good life, why not offer amnesty? No amnesty should be given to someone whose first act coming into the country is to break its law. We have immigration laws for a reason. You cannot just come into the country and break our law and expect us to forgive you for it. Christians, yes, are supposed to offer forgiveness to individuals who have wronged them. But a nation, a government, was instituted by God to promote good and to punish evil. Breaking the law is evil, period. And anyone who breaks the law should be punished for breaking the law. And if that means that you come into a country illegally, I'm sorry, but we will have to remove you. Every single person who is in this country right now illegally should be deported. If they want to try and go through the legal process, then we can put them at the back of the line and they can go through the legal process if we don't institute the moratorium first. But if you're here legally, I'm sorry, you're leaving. There are no ifs, ands, and buts about it. That's how it should be. Immigration is the most important issue to Americans right now. Republicans have a very good chance of using this for their advantage and to ride to victory. If Donald Trump can run on immigration effectively the way that he did in 2016, he can win this election. In order for him to win this election, he'll also have to have a good vice president. Now, before we transition to talks about vice president, I'm going to take a quick chairwine sip. If you've never had chairwine, I'm not sponsored. If you've never had chairwine, best soda in America. People from outside North Carolina don't know much about it, but it's an amazing soda. I love it. Chairwine's great. Drink chairwine. Go get yourself one today. There have been a lot of rumors and rumblings about who Trump's vice presidential pick is going to be. I don't have any answers as to who it's going to be. I don't claim to know, but I can give you some ideas of some people who I think would be good for the position. One of the top candidates right now that people have been talking about is Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president this year. I like Vivek. I think he has a lot of good ideas. He's young, he's energetic, he knows how to connect to younger voters. But I'm not so quite sure that he is vice presidential material, at least not right now. He's still inexperienced, he's still young, and there are still questions that many have about where he came from and who he is. He just popped up out of nowhere. We all have to acknowledge this. He did just pop up out of nowhere. Nobody had heard of him prior to this. Nobody knew where he came from. Nobody knew who he was. And then all of a sudden, you just see his face, and he's like, "Hi, my name is Vivek Ramaswamy, and I'm running for president." Now, that doesn't mean he's a bad person. However, we all know that Barack Obama similarly popped up out of nowhere, and he was a disaster for the country. That doesn't mean Vivek will be. However, I do think that we need to be careful. I'm not opposed to Vivek having a spot in the administration, however. I think vice president is not the spot, but I do think something like chief of staff, maybe, or energy of transport secretary, my bad, excuse me, secretary of transportation, secretary of energy, something of that nature would be good for him. He has a lot of good ideas when it comes to energy. He has a lot of good ideas in general, many of which Trump has been adopting, such as Vivek suggesting a ban on central bank digital currency, something Trump had not thought of, but after hearing Vivek speak about it, decided this is a good idea. Let's pursue this. Excuse me. Vivek, I think, is probably best suited for a cabinet position. Someone else who potentially could give a cabinet position, though it might be unlikely, is Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis didn't have the best relationship with Donald Trump during the campaign, and he has certainly not done himself any favors in terms of trying to build the bridges that were burned recently, especially with the tweet about him not giving Trump any taxpayer money to pay for his legal bills, which I think most Trump supporters realize is common sense. I don't think that taxpayers in Florida should have to pay for the president's legal bills. But the way that he messaged that, not the best. Now, if Trump picked DeSantis as his vice president, it would be a smart move strategically. DeSantis, despite by Trump's own admission being very similar to Trump on policy, has a little bit more moderate appeal. He also can help unite a wing of the party that Trump does need in order to win this election. If DeSantis became Trump's vice president, that would go a long way into unifying a fractured party. Unfortunately, I don't think that that is a likely scenario. Trump cares a massive amount about loyalty, And I don't think that he sees DeSantis as loyal enough to have a position in the administration. Certainly not vice president. As good of a vice president as DeSantis could potentially be, I just don't think it's going to happen. But who knows? A third person who not a lot of people have been talking about, but who could potentially be in a very good position to become vice president is Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. Like DeSantis, Tim Scott has a lot of moderate appeal. He's similar to Trump on certain policy issues, but just different enough to be able to unite different wings of the party. And like DeSantis, he ran against Trump, but instead of making his campaign anti Trump, he made it pro positivity. Tim Scott was one of the most positive presidential campaigns I've ever seen. The dude just exudes happiness, even if you're not a fan of him. It's hard to not like him as a person, at least. You can dislike him as a politician. You can think that he has bad ideas, but as a person, he's just a very likable guy. All right, how can you not like him? And that could do a lot to help Trump. It could help balance out the ticket. It could help him balance out on some certain policies that maybe some people don't think are all that sane, to put it lightly. I agree with Trump on most policies that he's running on, but some people don't. And if they see a figure like Tim Scott as vice president, the average American doesn't realize that the vice president does essentially nothing. So they'll look at it and say, I like that. It balances things out. I think that also Dr. Ben Carson, could do something similar. He's a lot closer to Trump on policy, but he's very moderate in terms of how he presents himself. That could also go a long way. The only downside with Ben Carson is the fact that he is so moderate in how he presents himself that he's very soft spoken. That could not be a good thing, potentially. I don't know who Trump's vice presidential pick is going to be. I don't even know if Trump knows who his vice presidential pick is going to be. There have been a lot of people in the campaign who have said that he's not 100% sure on anybody yet. He's still thinking it out. I think the latest thing I heard is his spokeswoman said that he was about 25% there on somebody. But that's still a long way to go. There's still a long way to go to figure that out. Hopefully, I'd like to see Ben Carson. I'd even like to see Byron Donalds. Byron Donalds and Ron DeSantis might be unlikely because Florida. There's the Florida connection there. Some people have been suggesting Lee Zeldin. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't trust Lee Zeldin. I know some friends from New York who have seen the bad side of Lee Zeldin. And I know a lot of people who think that he already is a rhino and is going to become a rhino very soon if he's not already. I think Ben Carson's the best pick. I think Tim Scott's a close second. Ron DeSantis would go a long way in unifying the party. But ultimately, the decision does not lie with us. The decision lies with Donald Trump. And it'll be interesting to see who he decides to go with. Now, I'm going to take a quick break and we're going to turn to some of the comments and we're going to see what some of you guys are saying. We've got Trump is the guy, but he likes gays too much. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't agree. Like I said, I don't agree with Trump on a lot of issues, the LGBT thing being one of them. I'm very pro traditional marriage. I don't think that he really cares that much about that issue. But, hopefully we will see what just happened. Adam asked, did I just ask to overturn the 14th Amendment? Maybe not in full, but there are some aspects of the 14th Amendment that I think are being misapplied. I'm not asking for us to overturn the 14th Amendment, but you can definitely, there are some things that should be reinterpreted. Putting the entire Bill of Rights onto state governments in the way that it was, I don't think that was ever the framers of the 14th Amendment's intent. I don't think that that's something that was ever supposed to happen. I don't think that was meant to happen. Let's see, 1 second. Oops, not yet. That's coming up in a second. That was a little early. So we have a long way to go until the 2024 election. But, I like to look at the future a little bit. I like to, a long, long way, a few months. But I like to look a little bit farther than just a few months. I like to look a few years ahead in the future and see what we have going on. And so that's why I created the 2028 way too early power rankings of potential presidential candidates in the 2028 election for the Republican primary. Now, let me explain what a power rating is. A power rating is not who I want to see run, it's not who I want to see win. A power rating is who I think, on a neutral playing field, if they announced today, would have the most momentum going into the election. And that's why at the top of my list, I have Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, a few minutes ago, I said I don't think that Vivek is cut out to be VP. I don't think that he's going to be VP. Despite that, I do think that he would have, if he announced today, the most momentum going into this next election. He was essentially went from zero to hero in a matter of months. Nobody knew his name before the election. Everybody knows his name now. He has the most name recognition out of anybody. He probably has the most resources that we just don't know about out of anybody. And he has a lot of support among the average person, among the average voter in the Republican Party. He's somebody that's young, charismatic, and he's widely been touted as a potential successor to Trump, should Trump win this election. It could be that he could be the front runner get in a few years when that primary starts off. He could even get the Trump endorsement early on. Who knows? I'm not sure. But I have Vivek at number one. I think he does have the most momentum going into this. A close second is Governor Ron DeSantis. I think DeSantis still has a ton of momentum that he could build off of to go into the 2028 election. And the reason I say that is because of a lot of his voters, while they have moved on to Trump, are still kind of pointing out and saying we should have nominated DeSantis. DeSantis was still the best guy. I'm going to vote for Trump, but I still think DeSantis was the best guy. Personally, I think it was probably going to be Trump all along, but I can see their argument. I think DeSantis suffered from a lot of blunders that this experience will be able to help him understand. And if he chooses to run again, he knows what he did wrong, and he'll be able to move forward off of that. Do I think DeSantis is going to run in 2028? I don't know. But if he did, I do think that he would have a ton of momentum going into that election that he would be able to positively build off of, and he could end up winning. Number 3, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Governor Youngkin is another person who, I didn't mention it earlier, but has been widely speculated as a potential vice president for Trump. He's wildly popular, especially in his state. Some drawbacks that he does have is that he hasn't really been able to accomplish much just because he's had a divided Congress. Now the House of Delegates and Senate in Virginia are both controlled by Democrats, so Youngkin doesn't have much that he can work with. Also, his term ends in 2025. He will have to wait a full 3 years before he's able to run for the next election. That's a very long time in American political cycle. Very long time. The only advantage he could have is if he's put in the Trump administration in some capacity, whether it be in a cabinet position or even in the vice presidency. That, or when he's done with his governorship, he could run for Senate. And even if he doesn't win, it's enough to keep him in the news. The next Senate election is in 2026. Perfectly timed. Perfectly timed for Youngkin to be able to finish out his term and then start an election cycle again. Will Youngkin run? I don't know. But that's not the point of the power rating, is it? At number 4, we have Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. Senator Vance has quickly become one of the rising stars in the Republican Party. He's very popular among the Trump base. He's very popular among traditional conservatives. He's very popular among a lot of people. Vance knows media very well. He's been in the media for a long time, and he knows how to work it. He has money, he has resources, he has donors. He's one of the best senators that we have in the Senate. In fact, he's widely regarded as the best or one of the best Republican senators among most people that you'd go out and ask today. Vance has already been speculated to be running in 28. It could happen. It very well could happen. And if he does, I do think that he would have a lot of momentum going into that race because of his popularity. Very similarly, at number 5, Tim Scott could also have a ton of momentum going into the 2028 race if he chooses to run again. Now, Tim Scott could move up in the power rankings if President Trump chooses him as vice president. Because a lot of people believe that Trump is going to choose somebody that he's going to be able to play kingmaker with and set up to be a successor in 2028. Now, Scott might not fit that bill. He's in his 60s. He's a little bit older. Trump is apparently looking for someone a little bit younger. Scott might not end up being a good VP pick if those are Trump's criteria. But if he does become VP, he has a lot of momentum going forward. And even if he doesn't become vice president, he still could have some momentum and be able to work off of it and be able to go into the 2020 election if he so chooses and run. At number 6, I have Tucker Carlson. A lot of people have speculated that Tucker Carlson might run. I have him at number 6 because he is wildly popular. He would have a lot of momentum going in. But the thing is, I don't think that he has quite as much appeal to voters as a presidential candidate as he does general people as a television host. Personally, I don't think Tucker's going to run for president. I don't think he's ever going to run for any public office. I think that he is very effective where he is. He's a communicator who is pushing a message and pushing an agenda to mass amounts of people who don't keep up with a lot of this stuff. Whether you like Tucker Carlson or not, he's one of the most effective communicators there is on the right. He has a large audience, he has a large following, and if he did choose to run for president, he would have a lot of momentum going into the race. Like I said, personally, I don't think he should. I don't think he would. I think he's perfectly content with what he's doing right now. If I were him, I wouldn't give it up. That's just me personally. If I were a television host with a mass following who was very popular, getting paid to do what he was doing, even if my show is on Twitter, which it is, but even if my show's only on Twitter and it's not on Fox News anymore, I still have millions of people listening to what I say and watching my content. Why would I give that up? If I'm Tucker Carlson, I'm not giving that up to run for president. I don't think he will. But if he did, he would have a lot of momentum going in, and that's why he's number 6 on the power ranking. Number 7, we have Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. Similar to J.D. Vance, Josh Hawley is typically named among some of the best senators in the United States Senate. I personally think he is the best senator in the United States Senate. He's my favorite senator. He would be my personal favorite in a 2028 election primary if he decided to run. The thing is, I don't think Hawley has nearly as much of the name recognition as Vance, despite having served longer. Hawley still has a relatively smaller name. He's a very good senator, very effective. He does have a good following, but not as good as some of the other people on this list. I think a lot of people would see his name and say, who's Josh Hawley? I hope that they would look him up. I hope that they would see that he is very, very effective at what he does. But I don't think that he quite has the name recognition and reach as some of the other people on this list should he decide to run. But he still does have enough that he would have a good bit of momentum going into this race, and that's why I have him at number 7. At number 8, we have Senator Ted Cruz, someone who we've seen run for president before in 2016. We've seen him kind of go through a political transformation, and we've seen him be very vocal about the issues of our day, whether it be critical race theory, what's going on down at the border, or abortion. Cruz would be a good pick to run for president. However, I do think that he has some baggage following him. A lot of people still remember a few years ago when Texas was hit by the massive snowstorm, Ted Cruz picking up his bags and running to Mexico. He got called on it and he decided to come back to the state, but still left a very bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. A lot of people like Ted Cruz, but not a lot of people trust Ted Cruz. He does have somewhat of a snake oil salesman uh, essence to him. Very funny, very fitting since he's from Texas. Cruz has been a good senator, but a lot of people are still not trustworthy of him. That's why I have him at number 8. I think he would have a good bit of momentum going in, but a lot of people would have reservations and questions and want to watch and wait and see what he does. Coming in at number 9, we have Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, excuse me. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. Someone who has had a fair bit of name recognition pop up recently. She could potentially be in the running for Trump's vice president. However, supposedly Trump has announced that he's not going to pick a woman, so that could hurt her chances. If Trump did pick her at vice president, it might boost her in the rankings a little bit, but I'm not sure that she would go much higher than number 6. That being said, I do think that she is in a very good position. There are some questions as to how conservative she actually is. She originally vetoed a transgender bathroom bill that was put forward in her state. She vetoed it. She reversed course a few years later, but she did initially veto it. This was at a time when the issue was seen as a losing issue for Republicans before Glenn Youngkin came along and Loudoun County became a national story. But she did turn around and do the right thing. But because of that veto, I think a lot of people are very untrusting of her. That, and also there was the huge scandal about her having a potential affair with Corey Lewandowski that dropped over the summer. If you don't know who Corey Lewandowski is, look up the Womp Womp video. Womp Womp. Anyway, a lot of people might not see Noem as a good pick. We'll see what happens. But rounding out the list at number 10, we have Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is currently running for president. Personally, I hope Nikki Haley never runs for president ever again in her lifetime. We do not need that woman within 100 miles of the White House. And Donald Trump, if you're watching, I doubt you are, but if you are, whatever you do, please do not put Nikki Haley in any position in your administration at all. But I do think that if Nikki Haley decided to run for president again in 2028, she would have a lot of momentum. A lot of the Never Trump faction of the party would instantly back her, and a lot of people who might be disenfranchised with Trump and how he's run the Republican Party for the last few years would also back her. There would be a lot of people seem to believe that because especially if Trump wins in 2028, that the more populist MAGA root and wing of the party is going to take deeper root and is going to become further entrenched, and it's going to be harder to get them out. They're right, that is true, but I do think that 2028 is going to still be a battle between, is the Trump-esque version of the party going to continue to prevail, or are there going to be people that are going to try to revert us back to something pre-2016? I do think that there's going to be a battle there. And I do think that Nikki Haley is probably going to be a major figurehead in that battle, whether she runs for president or not. If she decides to run for president in 2028, she's going to have a lot of momentum backing her. I hope that she doesn't, but we will see. The rest of the names on this list are people who I think are either unlikely to run or unlikely to get a lot of support in the nomination. I'll be posting this list later to Twitter and to Instagram if you want to view the full list, but I do not think that there are many people worth mentioning on this list, except for I do have Carrie Lake on there somewhere. I am personally not a huge fan of Carrie Lake. I do hope that she wins her Senate race, but I am not the biggest fan of her. And I don't think that 2 years in the Senate is quite enough to be ready to run for president. Similarly, Governor, or 4 years, my bad, still 4 years. That's not even a full term. Similarly, Mark Robinson, who's running for governor in North Carolina, there's been some buzz around him potentially running for president. I would love to see it happen one day, but I think only one term as governor would not be enough to run for president in a state that allows you to run consecutive back-to-back terms like North Carolina. I think that he should stay in North Carolina, run for governor again, and then 4 years later, 2032, if he wants to give it a shot, go for it. Some other names on the list: Tommy Tuberville, he made some noise this summer. I don't think that he would run, but I've seen some speculation. Katie Britt from Alabama. I think that she's a fine senator, but I don't think that she's quite presidential material yet. And, there's some other people in there that could end up running, maybe not, who might have a good bit of momentum, might not. One of those could be Marco Rubio, who ran in 2016. We've seen him kind of go through a political shift and evolution the last few years. He could be somebody to unite the Christian right and the MAGA movement of the party into one coherent force and move forward. I don't know if it'll happen, but potentially could. Who knows? We'll see. Only time will tell. Now we're going to transition a little bit, move away from politics and move into the other aspect of this show, which is sports. Now, for many of you who don't know me, I'm a huge sports fan. I love college football. And particularly, while I'm a Liberty student, I go Flames. I love the Liberty Flames. I'm also a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I almost cried the day that Nick Saban announced that he was retiring. I'm very sad to have heard that news. But I do think that Alabama knocked it out of the park with their hire of Kalen DeBoer of Washington, someone who, after 2 years at Sioux Falls, took Sioux Falls to a national championship. After 2 years at Washington, took Washington to a national championship. Who knows what 2 years at Alabama could do, especially since he still has Nick Saban around and is able to pick his ear a little bit. Now, there's been a lot of panic over the fact that a lot of players have entered the transfer portal or decommitted from the school. Caleb Downs is a good example. He was the best safety on the team. He was the best player on the team, period, in my opinion. But he ended up transferring to Ohio State. We also saw Ryan Hollywood Williams, a 5-star wide receiver recruit from high school, commit to the school and then decommit when Nick Saban announced he was retiring. But Hollywood has shown a little bit of hope for the program because a couple nights ago, it was announced that he was recommitting to Alabama and closing his recruitment. Not only that, but you've had some very good transfers come into the program from other programs, namely Washington, but also other places as well. You could be potentially about to see a lot of very good transfers come in from Michigan now that Jim Harbaugh's left for the NFL. I think Kalen DeBoer has a lot of potential to be a very good recruiter and to be able to draw a lot of talent to Alabama. Will he win a national championship in his first year at Alabama? Never say never, but I'm not so sure. But I do think that he could do a lot of good there. Will he be the next Nick Saban? Maybe not. But I think he is good enough to fill the shoes and to be able to have success there, even if he is not as successful as Saban was. Saban is the greatest college football coach we have ever seen in our lifetimes. I doubt there's going to be anybody quite as good as he was. And if there is, the only person I could see being as good as he is Kirby Smart in Georgia. But who knows? Georgia could end up suffering the same fate that Clemson did. A few years ago, everybody thought Clemson was going to be the next hot product. Everybody thought Dabo Swinney was going to pass Nick Saban. And then what happened? Transfer portal and NIL came onto the scene, and all of a sudden, Clemson is reverting back to the shadows. Will the same thing happen to Georgia? I doubt it. I don't think that it will necessarily happen in the same way. But it's also possible, and potentially even probable, that Georgia won't have nearly the same success in the same amount of time that Nick Saban has. Kirby Smart could end up leaving for the NFL. Who knows? A lot of people speculated he might leave for the Falcons job. He still might. But if he does stay at the program, they do have a bright future ahead of him. A program that does not have necessarily a bright future ahead of them in the NFL is the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers did just hire the offensive coordinator from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their head coach. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this hire. Some people say he's good. Some people say he'll bust. And some people say, why does it matter? David Tepper is the owner. As long as Tepper's there, nothing good is ever going to happen. I kind of fall into that camp. I think David Tepper has been the problem at Carolina since the day he stepped onto the field. As owner, he's been awful. He's reaching Dan Snyder levels of terrible. He's probably even surpassed Dan Snyder at this point. Tepper has been the worst owner in NFL history that I can think of. David Tepper needs to leave. He needs to go. He needs to be kicked out. I don't know how you can do it. I don't know how it's possible, but David Tepper needs to go now. Carolina will not be able to have success until that man is out the door, because the moment you do one thing bad, you're fired. Now, some people can argue, well, Frank Reich, it's understandable because he went, 1-7 before he got fired. I can see why you would think that he wasn't necessarily the greatest hire in the world. But Matt Rule had some decent success. He wasn't the best coach, but he wasn't as bad as Reich, and he still got canned. He was building the program up, but he still got canned. David Tepper does not know what he wants. He does not know how to get it. The only thing he knows is that he likes money. The money won't save Carolina. At this point, the only thing that will save Carolina is getting him out of there. Carolina hasn't been great since 2015. They went to a Super Bowl in 2015. They haven't been good since. And it breaks my heart because I'm a Panthers fan. But until we get rid of this guy, we're never going to end up like the Ravens and the 49ers, who I believe are the top choices for who's going to end up in the Super Bowl. The Ravens have a tough matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. Kansas City is a good team, but they've also shown some signs of struggling a little bit this season. Patrick Mahomes has struggled a lot. He's been frustrated. He's been he's had a lot of trouble, whether it be with his receivers and Travis Kelce dropping balls or his O-line allowing him to get sacked. There's been a lot of frustration in Kansas City. Now, will the NFL rig the game so that we are all stuck with Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl? I certainly hope not. I cannot stand Taylor Swift being the main centerpiece at football games now. It drives me insane. For the sake of the entire nation's sanity, I hope the Ravens win that football game. On the other side, I think the 49ers are going to win their matchup with the Detroit Lions. Personally, I want to see Detroit win. I want to see Detroit go to a Super Bowl. They've never been. I want to see them there. But they're facing a very, very tough team with Brock Purdy, who I think is a very underrated quarterback at center. Purdy's good. Purdy is really good. He does not get enough credit. He's had some mistakes. He's shown some inconsistencies here and there, but I do think that he's a good player. And I do think that the 49ers are going to end up proving themselves on Sunday and winning their game to go to the Super Bowl. Who will win the Super Bowl? I kind of lean Ravens, but I don't know for sure. We'll see. We'll see what the matchups look like. We'll see how the games go this weekend. But until then, it's all speculation. I do like the 49ers to win. I do like the Ravens to win. We'll see what happens. But until then, it'll be fun next few hours or next couple of days waiting to watch these games. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It's been very fun having this first live edition of the Jesse Hughes Show. Now, let me fill you in a little bit on how things are going to look going forward. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to start pre-recording segments and putting them together for the podcast. The show will still premiere live on Friday evenings. However, things will not necessarily actually be live. They will be pre-recorded, and they will drop, and they'll also go on Spotify. So if you want to listen to the audio and not have to watch the video, you can do that as well. We will be doing at least once a month a live show, and I might do emergency streams if something big happens. Like if, for example, if Trump ended up getting shot tomorrow, which I hope doesn't happen, I would probably do an emergency stream. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you all. God loves you, and so do I. Have a great night. And don't forget to like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at jhughes1776. Make sure to share this with your friends and family. The video will still be available after this, and the audio will be going on Spotify in the morning. Have a great night. God bless. Thank you.